Hey everybody, it's Alex from Alex and Erika's channel, and I've got a little story from our recent cruise on the Carnival celebration. We had a little incident come up and we had to call security. So recently we took a back-to-back cruise on the Carnival celebration. The first week we did with a large group of family and friends, 18 of us. The second week it was just the 5 of us. Eric and I, if you've known us a little while, we typically cruise with our kids. We have 3 kids, 2 boys, 7 and 9, and then Emma, who is 2 years old. So typically when we cruise, we always have some ground rules. I mean, we have ground rules in general, at home, on vacation, what the kids can't do, what they can do, the expectations, being polite, and so forth. And the first week they were with their cousins, they had a great time. The second week, they were really feeling like they knew their way around the ship, and they were feeling a little bit of a sense of independence, and they had been bugging us to go up to the sports court a few times, specifically to go on their own. Our cabin was just a few decks below in the same elevator bay. We thought, okay, we'll give them an opportunity to be a little more responsible, let them go up to the sports court. And so it was in Costa Maya. We got back to the ship kind of early in Costa Maya, and we had a few hours before we had to go to dinner. We were going to Teppanyaki that night, and Ada and Ethan really wanted to go up and play some basketball. So we said, sure, you can go up there for an hour, and if you're not there, you need to be back in the cabin. Straight up to the sports court or straight back to the cabin. And they agreed, and off they went. They were on their way. I realize some parents may not be okay with this. If you know our kids, Aiden specifically is really responsible, and they've been on a bunch of cruises. They feel like they know their way around, especially with Carnival and the sports decks and getting up and down the elevators. So we thought, okay, let's give them an hour, see what happens, let them go up there. So about 40 minutes goes by, and I thought, I'm gonna go upstairs, I'm gonna go up to the sports court and check on them. So I told Erika, stay here in the cabin, don't leave for a little bit, because if you leave and the boys come back and we're not here, they'll probably freak out and they'll go looking for us. So I went up there, and sure enough, as I go up to the sports deck, sports court, they're nowhere to be found. There's a few people up there playing basketball, but no sign of the boys. So I walk around a couple minutes, and then I head back to the cabin, and I walk in, and I remembered asking Erika, are the boys here? And she's like, no, and obviously the cabins aren't very big, so she knows they're not there. She has a little bit of a puzzled look on her face. I'm like, shoot, I must have just missed them in the elevator. So I'm gonna head back up there, hang out there for a few minutes, but don't leave the cabin. Stay here just in case they show up. So I go back to the sports court. I sit there in one of those little day beds that they have out there, hang out there for about 10 minutes, and there's no sign of the kids. I message Erika on WhatsApp and I said, hey, any sign of the boys? And she said no. And as you can see in her message, I could kind of sense a little concern coming through the message. And so I thought, okay, I'm gonna go to guest services and see if they've used their card anywhere. If you know, when you're on a cruise ship, you can typically see the activity of all cards if you go to guest services. And so I went to guest services. I said, hey, we let our boys go to the sports court, but can you tell me if there's been any activity on their cards? I know we typically set an allowance on how much they can spend. She ran the cards and said, look, they just used the card in the arcade a few minutes ago. I said, oh, perfect. I'm gonna go up to the arcade. I'm sure they must be up there. So I go up to the arcade, no sign of the kids, no sign of the boys. One of the things that I've noticed recently in the last couple of years with Carnival is there's definitely a lot more security. Typically there's always a security guard hanging out in the arcades now. I asked the security guard if they had seen a couple boys, showed him a photo, and she thought that she saw them, but she wasn't sure. She hadn't seen them in a few minutes. And so I said, shoot, okay. Went back to the sports court, no sign. Went back to guest services, messaged Erika, no sign. At this point, Erika's like telling me, just go to guest services, have them notify security, and that's what I did. I went back to guest services. I told the same lady. She was so helpful all week. We dealt with her for 2 weeks. She was always so pleasant, so polite. And I said, I think we should maybe reach out to security. What do you think? We haven't seen them in like 30-40 minutes. We told them to be back in the cabin at this time. They're not in the cabin. We're about 10 minutes past that time they were supposed to be back in the cabin. And she said, no worries, I'll reach out to security. And so she reached out to security, and I was amazed. Within a few minutes, the head of security was there with an assistant security guard. And we immediately went back into this little small meeting room. There's a small little meeting room there behind guest services. And this is when things, I remember just like a little uptick in your blood pressure, and his camera was running and she was taking notes, he was taking notes. Basically asked me for a statement of like, you know, just a breakdown of the events, basically everything I just explained to you on camera. I told him, normally we don't let him do this, but we just said, look, sports court or the cabin, sports court or the cabin. Those are the only two places you're allowed to go right now. And he asked if we could go to the cabin to do a quick search of the room. I said, sure, no problem. So we went to the cabin, and they did a quick little sweep of the room. No signs of the kids. Erika was there. They pulled Erika off to the side and they took a statement from her. And so I thought, man, this is like, they're really being thorough about this, which I think is good. You know, the reason I'm sharing this story is because I think sometimes, you know, these cruise lines, they get a little grief for being a little bit too lenient, letting a little bit too much fun happen at times. They took a statement from Erika. They searched the cabin. We went back to guest services and they said, look, we're going to put out an APB, like an all points bulletin. He didn't use that term, but we're going to notify like everybody with a radio to be on the lookout for your two boys. They put out their notice to be on the lookout for these two boys, and within minutes, it was probably 5-6 minutes, a call came across one of the radios and they said they had found the boys. And I said, oh, great. And immediately I just felt some relief, because I felt like we went from being suspects to just being maybe bad parents that let their kids have a little bit too much leeway. And they said not to worry, hang out here for a few minutes. One of the security guards is bringing the boys to guest services. So I messaged Erika, she was relieved. I told her just to come up to guest services if she wanted with Emma. We would be there. They were bringing the boys and they'd be here in a couple minutes. And so sure enough, a few minutes later, security guard comes walking around the corner. Aiden and Ethan, with smiles as big as can be. They thought they were having a great time getting a private escort here from a security guard, and Erika wasn't as pleased. She was a little frustrated. She basically scolded them a little bit. The reason I'm sharing this story is just because I was really impressed overall with the way security handled this. They were very detailed, very thorough, and very professional. I reviewed the policy, as you can see, the policy here for minors. There are rules in place specifically for curfews and minors, and they can't be out after certain hours. But I don't think we violated any rules by letting them go to the sports court and back. From what I read, most of the rules that are in place for minors are venues that they're not allowed to be in, or locations of the ship, or specific times they can't be out past unless they're accompanied by an adult. So that was just a quick story I wanted to share about my experience dealing with security. I don't know if you've ever had to deal with security. I'd love to hear any feedback you might have. I also just created posted a video about cruising on Carnival with infants, specifically taking advantage of their Night Owls program, which is their group babysitting program for kids that are 6 months old and above. The one thing that I really like about Carnival is that if you do have an infant that's 6 months to 2 years old, they will babysit them. Most cruise lines, you have to be 3 years and above and potty trained. Carnival is one of the few that will make an exception and do late night babysitting until 1:30 in the morning. So check out that video. And if you have any feedback about a specific situation you had with the security on any cruise line or any cruise ship, I'd love to hear some feedback. Leave a comment. Or if you have any questions about cruising in general, leave a question below. Give this a share, thumbs up, and I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. We'll talk to you soon.